Learn English through the story of Pope Francis. What if I told you that the most powerful man in the Catholic Church took the bus to work, cooked his own meals, and lived in a small room? This is the incredible true story of Pope Francis, a man who chose simplicity over power and kindness over fame. In this video, you'll improve your English listening skills while enjoying a heartwarming story full of hope and inspiration. So sit back, read along with the captions, and let the story begin. Chapter 1. A Boy from Buenos Aires. The year was 1936, and Buenos Aires was alive with music and prayer. In a small neighborhood, a baby boy named Jorge Mario Bergoglio was born. His parents were Italian immigrants who had left home to find a better life. They worked hard and raised their family with strong Catholic values. Jorge was the eldest of 5 children in a loving, close-knit home. He often helped his mother cook and cleaned with his siblings. Life was simple, but their hearts were full of joy and faith. Every Sunday, the family went to Mass and prayed together at night. Jorge's father worked on the railways, fixing machines with his hands. He taught Jorge to be honest, humble, and kind to others. His mother, a gentle woman, read him stories of saints and heroes. Jorge listened closely and dreamed of doing something great one day. As a young boy, he was quiet, thoughtful, and loved to read books. At school, he studied hard and always helped his classmates. He enjoyed science and wanted to be a doctor to help the sick. But deep down, he also loved being close to the church and priests. One day, Jorge fell very ill and had to stay in the hospital. Doctors found he had a serious lung infection that needed surgery. They removed part of his lung to save his life when he was young. It was a scary time, but Jorge stayed brave and trusted God. While recovering, he prayed a lot and thought about his life. He began to wonder if God had a special plan just for him. The hospital stay changed something deep inside his heart. He started to feel called to serve, not with medicine, but with faith. As he grew older, that quiet calling became louder each day. And though he still cared for science, his heart leaned toward God. Jorge didn't yet know it, but his journey had already begun. A boy from Buenos Aires was about to walk a very different path. Chapter 2. A Calling from God. Jorge was now a young man, thoughtful and full of quiet dreams. He still liked science, books, and talking with his friends. But deep inside, a small voice kept whispering to his heart. It said, "Follow me," and Jorge knew it was God speaking to him. He thought about it for a long time, walking alone and praying. He asked God for a sign, and the peace he felt was his answer. One day, he told his family that he wanted to become a priest. His parents were surprised, but they smiled and gave him their blessing. Jorge joined the seminary and began his training to serve God. He read books about faith, love, and the teachings of Jesus. It was not always easy, but he felt sure he was on the right path. Soon he met the Jesuits, a group known for their deep faith and service. Jorge felt a strong connection to their way of life and learning. The Jesuits believed in helping the poor and living with humility. He joined them and became a Jesuit, ready to serve with all his heart. He took vows of poverty, chastity, and obedience to God's will. Life as a Jesuit was simple, quiet, and full of purpose. Jorge spent long hours in study, prayer, and silence. He learned that real strength often comes from being still. He also learned to listen more than he spoke, with love and care. As part of his training, Jorge worked in poor neighborhoods. He met families who had very little but shared everything with joy. He gave food, comfort, and hope to those who were suffering. In their eyes, he saw God, and his faith grew stronger each day. He never saw himself as better than anyone he helped. Instead, he believed that God was present in every person. Jorge cooked, cleaned, and prayed with the people he served. He smiled often and always gave his time to those in need. Years passed, and Jorge continued to grow in wisdom and grace. He was no longer just a student. He was becoming a true shepherd. A calling had found him, and he followed it with his whole heart. The boy from Buenos Aires was now a man with a mission from God. Chapter 3. Trials and Leadership. Jorge's quiet strength did not go unnoticed by those around him. His superiors saw a leader in him, someone calm and wise. In 1973, he was named the leader of all Jesuits in Argentina. He was still young, but his heart was full of courage and faith. It was a dark and dangerous time in his country's history. A military dictatorship had taken control of Argentina. Fear filled the streets, and many people disappeared without a trace. Priests, teachers, and students were often watched or taken. Jorge stayed calm, even when fear knocked at his door. He did not run or hide, but chose to stay with his people. He helped many find safety, sometimes in secret ways. He took risks, not for fame, but to protect the innocent. He prayed hard, asking God to guide every choice he made. He hid people in church buildings and helped them escape danger. Many say Jorge saved lives by acting with quiet bravery. He never spoke of these acts, but others told the stories later. Still, not everyone understood or agreed with his choices. Some accused him, but he carried the pain in silence. He knew the truth, and so did God, and that gave him peace. He forgave his critics and kept walking the path of love. Each day brought new tests of his strength and his faith. Jorge continued to teach, to serve, and to lead by example. Even during the darkest days, he did not lose hope in people. He believed love was stronger than fear, always and forever. People began to see him not just as a priest, but as a guide. They came to him for advice, comfort, and understanding. He listened with care and spoke with gentle but firm truth. His courage came not from power, but from deep belief in God. By the time the dictatorship ended, Jorge had become a light that had stayed on, even when everything was dark. His leadership had left a mark on many hearts across the land. The trials had shaped him, but never broken his spirit. Chapter 4. The Simple Archbishop. Years passed, and Jorge's journey with God continued to grow. In 1998, he was named the Archbishop of Buenos Aires. It was a big title, but Jorge stayed the same humble man. He didn't move into the fancy house that came with the job. Instead, he chose a small apartment near the city center. He cooked his own meals and made his own bed each day. He didn't own a car. He took the bus just like everyone else. People often saw him riding with them, quiet and smiling. He walked the streets of Buenos Aires in plain black shoes. He visited the poor in slums and prayed with them in their homes. He listened to their stories and never rushed away. To him, they were not poor. They were his brothers and sisters. Jorge spoke out against injustice and stood up for the weak. He challenged leaders who forgot the needs of the people. He reminded the church that faith must be shown through love. His words were clear, but his actions spoke even louder. He often said, "The church must go to the streets." And he did just that every day without needing praise. He sat with the sick, ate with the hungry, and comforted the lost. He believed that serving others was the heart of the gospel. Jorge was not interested in power, fame, or riches. He believed God wanted him to be close to the people. He lived simply because he believed Jesus did the same. And the people of Buenos Aires saw God's love in him. They called him Father Jorge, not Your Grace or Your Excellency. He didn't wear fancy robes or golden crosses. He wore a simple black suit with a wooden cross on his chest. He smiled often, but his eyes showed deep care and wisdom. The rich and the poor respected him, but he stayed humble. He always remembered where he came from and who he served. He walked beside the people, not above them. And because of that, the people loved him deeply. Chapter 5. The White Smoke. In 2013, the Catholic Church faced a moment of great change. Pope Benedict XVI had stepped down, shocking the world. Cardinals from around the globe gathered in Rome to choose a new pope. The air was full of wonder, hope, and many quiet prayers. In the Sistine Chapel, they voted behind closed doors. Outside, crowds waited in St. Peter's Square under the cold sky. Eyes watched the small chimney for a sign of white smoke. White smoke would mean a new pope had been chosen. On the fifth ballot, the decision was made. White smoke rose into the air, and the bells rang loudly. The crowd cheered, not knowing who had been chosen yet. A name echoed through the halls: Jorge Mario Bergoglio. The man from Argentina, the humble archbishop, was now pope. It was the first time a pope came from the Americas. It was also the first time a Jesuit had been chosen, and the first time the name Francis had ever been picked. Jorge chose the name Francis, after Saint Francis of Assisi. Saint Francis loved peace, nature, and the poor above all. Jorge wanted to lead the church with that same spirit, a spirit of kindness, simplicity, and deep love for others. The world watched as he stepped out onto the balcony. He stood there, dressed in white, silent and calm. Then he smiled, and the crowd cheered with joy and wonder. His first words were soft, but they touched millions of hearts. "Brothers and sisters, good evening," he said with warmth. He asked the people to pray for him before he blessed them. This simple act showed his deep humility and gentle heart. He was not above them. He stood with them in faith. People across the world felt hope rise in their hearts. Here was a pope who rode buses and cooked his meals, a pope who chose to serve instead of rule. The church had a new shepherd, and he was full of love. Chapter 6. A Different Kind of Pope. Pope Francis began his new role with a heart full of grace, but he did not move into the grand papal palace in Rome. Instead, he chose a small guest house to live in. He wanted to stay close to people and live simply. He ate in the cafeteria with others and walked without guards. He carried his own bag and wore simple clothes every day. He refused the golden rings and red shoes worn by past popes. His cross was still the plain wooden one he had always worn. Francis quickly showed the world he was a different kind of pope. He spoke with love, not judgment, in every message he gave. He said the church should be like a field hospital for the world, a place of healing, not a place of rules and fear. He welcomed everyone, no matter who they were or where they came from. He said, "Who am I to judge?" And those words echoed worldwide. He reached out to people who had felt pushed away from the church. He reminded everyone that God's love is for all, without limits. Francis traveled to many countries, not just rich and safe ones. He visited war zones, refugee camps, and places hit by disasters. He washed the feet of prisoners and kissed the hands of the sick. He showed the world that faith lives through action, not just words. He spoke often about the poor and the forgotten. He said the world must care more for people than for money. He called on leaders to fight poverty and protect the weak. His voice was soft, but his words carried great power. Francis also cared deeply about the earth and nature. He said the planet is a gift that we must protect. He wrote a letter called Laudato Si about saving the environment. He told the world that caring for creation is a holy duty. People of all faiths and even no faith admired him. They saw in him a leader full of hope and mercy. He made the world stop and think about kindness again, and in doing so, he inspired millions to live with love. Chapter 7. The Final Journey. Even in his later years, Pope Francis kept his heart wide open. He woke early, prayed deeply, and smiled at everyone he met. He still rode in simple cars and greeted crowds with gentle waves. He never grew tired of serving, even as his body grew weak. His health began to change, but his spirit stayed strong. He used a wheelchair more often and moved a little slower. Still, he showed up each day to do the work of love. He never let pain stop him from caring for others. Francis continued to speak about peace, mercy, and unity. He called for nations to end war and care for the poor. He prayed for the earth, for families, and for all who suffer. His voice grew softer, but his words still touched the world. He smiled through his struggles and gave thanks to God each day. He said life is a gift, even in times of weakness and loss. He reminded others to be joyful even when things are hard, and he never stopped believing in the power of kindness. On Easter Monday, April 21st, 2025, the world grew quiet. Pope Francis passed away peacefully in the early morning light. He was 88 years old. His journey was full and faithful to the end. Beside him were prayers, love, and the gentle presence of God. News spread fast, and hearts around the world broke with sorrow. In churches, homes, and streets, people lit candles and cried. Many said he felt like a father, a friend, or a light in the dark. They remembered his smile, his hugs, and his simple, loving ways. Crowds gathered in Rome to say goodbye to their beloved Pope. They came from every corner of the world to honor his life. His coffin was plain, just like the man himself had been, but the love it carried was greater than gold or marble. Leaders of all faiths sent words of respect and deep thanks. They called him a bridge, a peacemaker, and a servant of the poor. Children drew pictures of him with doves, crosses, and hearts. And old men and women whispered he was truly a man of God. And that's the story of Pope Francis. We hope you enjoyed listening to and practicing your English with this story. Now here's a question for you. What is one thing you learned from the life of Pope Francis? Tell us in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. If you like the video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share with your friends. See you in the next story, and keep learning English in fun ways.